Mr. Priel, the floor is yours.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did send out an email this morning to Mayor and Council alerting everyone to the fact that in our Housing Stability Benefit program, you'll know that we fund utility arrears, last month's rent, rent arrears, utility arrears, mattresses, bed bug remediation, several things. We have basically just have run out of money. We had a huge spike in October that we didn't see coming, to be honest with you, in terms of people and their hydro bills. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and Rob Mastroianni, the acting manager, is doing some number crunching, but I have, the direction to me is to live within that budget. That's clear direction in a report that I have. I also have in that report delegated authority to implement some funding caps, which I'm going to have to do if we're going to get through it all this year. I think we have maybe 700,000, Rob? 700,000 remaining in that budget line. Our projected costs, if we were to continue offering the same level of service to the same groups, we would have been a $2.5 million deficit till that bring us till the end of March. And you're going to hear complaints from constituents. Meeting with Julie and with Rob immediately after this meeting to see what we do. We're going to see if there are other options for people if they need mattresses or if they need bed bug remediation. But it's a significant problem for our community. It's a capped budget. It used to be demand driven. I sort of thought that this day was going to come upon us. We have other funding issues in Julie's division, not just this one, that we're faced with. Capped budget. Lots of demand, both in terms of increased rent, increased hydro, and that in some cases I'm going to have to just say we're going to have to change, like I said, our funding criteria. One of the options that I will be considering and talking to Rob and Julie is that it's discretionary that we provide these benefits to ODSP and low income. And one of the options I'll be pursuing is that with some sufficient notice, whatever that is that we do not provide the services to ODSP, given that that's a provincial responsibility.
Okay. I certainly, having received those emails, am familiar with the concerns that have been raised around the service level agreements and appreciate this verbal update. Members of committee, we have Councillor Skelly on the list. If there's any other speakers. Councillor Jackson, no?
Thank you. Through the chair, and Joanne, I'm just wondering if we should be, and I know it's a bit of a chuckle, but the reality is the Premier has admitted her personal mistake in the soaring hydro rates. Is it worth pursuing some sort of notice to the province saying we need, you know, it's your mistake, you might need to bail us out on this because the people are losing their homes on soaring hydro costs? And the second question I have is regarding bed bugs. We have, I believe, one full-time person on staff in that department. Are we making any progress? And, you know, what is our strategy moving forward if we're not? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. And the first point you made, Councillor Skelly, if you'd like to, you know, have a motion to direct us to write to the Premier. On the second point, in terms of bed bugs, we're actually bringing a report forward the next cycle, which will give you an update on the bed bug strategy, the funding that we received from Council last year, and the progress that we've made is coming next cycle. So December the, whatever, I forget the date of our 12th, is it, of our next committee meeting.
Thank you. And perhaps maybe there is an opportunity to have a motion to, I mean, this is something this weekend when the Premier admits it's her personal mistake in terms of the soaring hydro costs, and it's something that has had an impact on every single person in the province. Perhaps we could ask that a motion be put forward asking the province for this particular fund to have, to have a motion put forward that we seek the shortfall, funding from the province to address the shortfall in this discrepancy. What is the fund called? Discretionary fund?
Yeah, so it's within our, it's CHIPI, the Consolidated Homeless Prevention Initiative is what that stands for, and within that we are finding shortfalls within that entire envelope of funding, including the program that we're talking about right now, the Housing Stability Benefit. So the overall program we have a shortfall, and this particular stream we have a significant shortfall.
Well, now, Councilor Marola is bringing to my attention that he's already done it, but has he done that specific
Yeah, there was a motion
fund?
that came regarding hydro and those rates, but it should also be noted for this particular program, that's only been the case since October.
Sorry, so if I may have some
Sure.
leniency here. Councilor Marola, does this contradict your motion, and has your motion gone forward?
Okay, so just for point of clarity, I brought forward a motion to not support the province's decision.
Oh, that
That's
motion.
not,
Which is-
okay.
okay.
No, this is
With
different.
respect to the privatization of hydro, which led to the increase.
This is different. This is different.
Which led to the increase, and it was defeated, so it's not different, because her
Well-
mistake is related to that motion.
Her mistake is related to a lot of motions, believe me, but.
No, but you support.
Hold
But
on.
I didn't support,
We'll-
hang on.
we'll let her-
What I'd like
we'll let
to
her
do
put forward
is
the
is
motion.
to put a motion forward to ask to seek funding from the province based on the admission by the Premier that she has caused rates to soar, that the province meet the shortfall to address the shortfall that we have just identified in our discretionary fund. And so that would be the motion that I would be bringing forward.
That's,
Thank you very much. Did you want to go on the speakers list, Councillor Jackson?
I'm still listening to this conversation.
Okay, excellent. Because I didn't vote for the merger, but I know you may have. Anyways, Councillor Farr.
I only read the headline, I didn't read the article in its entirety. I read some of it about the mistakes. So before I could vote on this, I would want to be clear on what exactly our Premier is apologizing for before we actually put the Premier in a motion saying, well, you said it was a, and for those who understand it better, I do apologize. I'm just asking the mover, is this specific to under the CHIPPY umbrella, the housing stability benefit that we're specifically trying to address here where
It is
Joanne
specific to
okay.
Joanne's plight that was identified this morning.
Okay, great.
I'm going to put myself on the speakers list, so Councillor Marula. Just for clarity, because I understanding that with the timing of the spikes in hydro, when would that have come into play through you, Mr. Chair? When would those rates have created a material effect that could have potentially provided this pressure?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that the spike we started to see in October, it was the October, when people got their bills for the summer months in October is when we saw a significant spike in terms of people coming to the Housing Help Center, particularly on utility arrears. But I'm not going to say that that is the only driver. Utility rates are, for sure, but people's ability overall, income is the problem.
Could we,
is the problem.
thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the mover of the motion, could we ask for a report back on the factors that have affected this funding so that we can adequately identify what is the energy pressure, what is the rent pressure? I would argue the rent pressure, it could potentially be equally as high and other pressures so that we can adequately address what that shortfall is. Because it may be material, it may not be material. I'd just like to know what that number looks like, if that's okay.
I think that's fine. But I would like to see, I think we're going to have to put pressure back, push back on the province and say we are going to need some help. And it's only going to get worse as we get into the winter months. So yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And I do know that there was also a motion through you, Mr. Chair, on the issue that we had with SAMS, which was a greater, I think, downloading issue that we dealt with around this table as well. No, you're also the chair, and I still have the floor right now. So just so that we're aware of all the different ores that we have in the water regarding the provincial downloading, the cost on our programs at this committee was also identified through SAMS, and I'm not sure if that report has come back in terms of what that's cost us either, which is another oops, just identifying the oopses around the tables. At any rate, I'll leave that now for where it is. I said my piece. Councilor Marula, are there any other members on the speakers list? Yourself?
just myself. Mr. Chairman, let me just clarify what occurred. There were two motions that were brought forward. This one that I'm referring to that is directly correlated to her apology was the privatization of Hydro One and the fact that that led to the increases that we're now being subjected to. And I brought forward a motion in June of 2015, encouraging council, which lost 10-6, as a result of whatever reason, but this council has formally endorsed the privatization of Hydro One, which has led to the increases that Wynn is apologizing for. Hence, the motion that is being presented today, in many ways, would require a reconsideration of the motion I brought forward last spring that lost 10-6. But Councillor Skelly wasn't on council at that time. It was Duval and Duval actually supported it. But those that were actually in favor of hydro privatization was the mayor, Pearson, Johnson, Vanderbeek, Pasuta, Connolly, Jackson, Whitehead, Ferguson, and Aidan Johnson. So one of those individuals who I formally asked for, I believe at the last council meeting, to come forward for reconsideration, could do so anytime, and I will second it at the appropriate time, as I mentioned a number of times. But there's a direct correlation between the privatization of Hydro One, which this council has formally endorsed, and the increase which Premier Wynn has formally apologized for, which needs to be highlighted, which I think complicates matters for this motion, because I think we would need to reconsider the endorsement of the privatization of Hydro One that this council so proudly did last spring. So that's about it.
The context, although you named vicariously individuals, we do have next on the speakers list, Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Skelly's motion is specific to the housing plate, number one, so it's separate. Number two, I would remind the 6 staunch pro-LRT supporters who were against the privatization of hydro where their money for the LRT is coming from. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that, but just know that we never, it was never conditional LRT support on the sale of hydro. If it was, I wouldn't have supported it. Councillor Marula.
On that point, I'm glad that Councillor Jackson mentioned that. I was never prepared to sell out the people of this city for LRT.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, that was never a condition of my support for LRT. Never.
Sure.
Okay. Let's fabricate.
I think we've really moved off.
We have. So I do have on the first-time speakers list, Councillor Partridge. We do have a motion on the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that's what we're actually discussing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have on the floor, if you could, just to restate your motion, including the report back.
My motion is to have staff report back. First of all, it's to address housing and the pressures that, and again, Joanne, if I may have you identify this particular pocket of funding.
It's the housing start.
It's a housing stability benefit.
Housing stability.
The housing stability benefit shortfall due to, we want to know, we're asking staff to identify the causes of the shortfall, and if the causes of the shortfall clearly point to rising hydro costs, then we will ask this city to ask the province to provide funding to meet that shortfall. So that is the
So you've heard the motion.
Still seconded, Mr.
Strongly, firmly seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. May I please have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Jackson, seconded by Skelly. All those in favor? Carried.